I'm delighted to have been invited to share some thoughts with Jamaica's Intellectual Property Office on this World Intellectual Property Day. It's a particular honor as the theme for this day is Innovate for a Green Future. What a coincidence of time and topic, as today, April 26, marks the close of Earth Week, during which we celebrated the 50th anniversary of Earth Day on April 22nd. And also the anniversary of the signing of the Paris Agreement in 2016. Implicit in both events is the concept of innovation and a green future. The Paris Agreement sought to limit global warming by reducing greenhouse gas emissions and to support building the capacity of countries to adapt to the impacts of climate change. An important aspect of the agreement included financial assistance and technology innovation and transfer for developing countries. Earth Day was launched in 1970 to bring citizen action for cleaning the environment and has engaged millions of persons globally over the years. The Earth Day theme for 2020 was climate action. And indeed, our focus has been on the health of the planet. I believe every citizen of the world is greatly concerned with overcoming the deadly COVID-19 pandemic, reducing loss of life, improving conditions that triggered the wild spread, seeking new financial and governance mechanisms, learning lessons, and identifying opportunities to improve health, reduce poverty, and generally make our world and country a better place for all our citizens. Men and women, young and old, rich and poor. A new era has been created. I cannot help but refer to the report of the World Commission on Environment and Development, entitled Our Common Future, and piloted by the then Prime Minister of Norway, published as far back as 1987, and the report that heralded the UN Programme of Action on Sustainable Development. It charted the way for the trailblazing United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, which many will remember as the Rio Conference. What is significant for us to reflect on at this time, as we contemplate innovation and the application of intellectual pursuit, is that observations made over 30 years ago by outstanding scholars are still relevant today. What were some of the points that they made? And I quote, "Over the course of this century, the relationship between the human world and the planet that sustains it has undergone a profound change. When the century began, neither human numbers nor technology had the power to radically alter planetary systems. As the century closes, not only do vastly increased human numbers and their activities have that power, but major unintended changes are occurring in the atmosphere, in soils, in waters, among plants and animals, and in the relationships among all of these. The rate of change is outstripping the ability of scientific disciplines and our current capabilities to assess and advise. It is significant that the United Nations Sustainable Goals, commonly referred to as the SDGs and Agenda 2030, were also adopted in 2015 as a universal call to action to end poverty, to protect the planet, and ensure that all people enjoy peace, health, and prosperity by 2030. The year 2015 was indeed regarded, and that's 5 years ago, was regarded as a defining year for the environmental, climate change, and disaster risk reduction agenda. It is the agenda that addresses the reduction of poverty and hunger, agenda that speaks to improving the quality of life through sustainable livelihoods, agenda that speaks to water security, food security, clean energy production and security, efficient use of resources, appropriate disposal and handling of waste, clean air, healthy working environments. It's about creating what we describe as sustainable prosperity, which places financial progress in a larger balance with environmental stewardship, public health, social well-being, equity, community capacity, vitality, and resilience. Here we are, 5 years later, with an indescribable crisis. The United Nations, in its March 2020 report entitled Shared Responsibility, Global Solidarity, Responding to the Social and Economic Impacts of COVID-19, has noted, among other things, the value that could have come from greater progress having been made on climate change. Had we been further advanced in meeting the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement on climate change, we could better face this challenge with stronger health systems, fewer people living in extreme poverty, less gender inequality, a healthier natural environment, and more resilient societies, the report said. We must seize the opportunity of this crisis to strengthen our commitment to implement the 2030 Agenda and the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. By making progress on our global roadmap for a more inclusive and sustainable future, we can better respond to future crises, the report added, having also referenced the need to learn from this crisis and build back better. So, where should we be here in Jamaica thinking rebuilding back better, re-innovation for a green future? I would like to suggest that we need to begin to look at our urban centers. Our urban centers require a great deal of attention. Like many parts of the world, we have now more than 50% of our population living in cities and towns. We tend to think of the city only as the Kingston metropolitan area, but we have a Kingston metropolitan area which really is also referred to as the Kingston metropolitan region if you extend as far west as Old Harbour, because so many of our people live outside of the boundaries of Kingston and work in Kingston. They have to use transportation to get here. But what is significant is that in our urban centers we have high densities, we have people living in squalor, and so when we have something like a disease, when we have something like an epidemic, it is very easy to spread because living conditions are so poor in many areas. And so I would like to suggest that as we speak about a green future, as we speak about environmental improvement, we need to begin to look at how we treat with our urban centers, how we treat with the population, housing, density. We need to infill, use our innovative genius, shall we call it, to infill some of the traditional residential areas, which many of which already have infrastructure in place that could deal with upgrading and at less cost. So urban innovation is critical. We have within the energy and climate change dictates, we speak about smart cities, which really refers specifically to how we utilize energy. But I would like to suggest that it is more than that. We need to look at how we handle our waste, how we handle our sanitation. Do we have sufficient water available? What exactly are we doing? We need to glean some lessons from what we are experiencing here as we talk about innovating for the future. So housing, densities, water, and sanitation is important. We also need to think of food security as we move forward, because this epidemic is also showing us the interconnectedness of our societies. While we're shutting down different aspects of the economy, we see that our agriculture sector is suffering. But as we look at our agriculture sector and we think of the link with climate change, we are also looking at extreme events, and we are looking at pressures, the innovation that is necessary, the technology that is necessary to help us to have sustainable food supply. We have one project that is taking place, and it is a part of the climate change agenda, and is a technology needs transfer a program or a technology transfer, and the focus is on water security, agriculture, and energy, and to a lesser extent coastal resources. However, when we begin to look at all of these, again we see the interconnectedness among these. It's maybe interesting to note here also that at the Scientific Research Council, a good deal of research is taking place, a good deal of innovation is taking place with respect to food security and also with respect to climate resilience. So some of this is happening, and it is related to intellectual property, but I think that we ought to be focused on how we apply our intellectual rigor. So yes, we create, yes, we want to ensure that we own that creation, but I think we really want to be innovative in terms of how we apply some of our intellectual rigor towards improved living conditions. And again, just to quote from one of the scholars of 30 years ago, and very, very applicable today, and we're seeing it in a most outstanding way, that the problems of today do not come with a tag marked energy or economy or sustainable development or carbon dioxide or climate change or demography, nor does it come with a label indicating a country of origin. The problems are multidisciplinary, they are interdisciplinary, they are transnational, they are transglobal, they are transboundary. The problems are not primarily scientific and technological. In science, we have the knowledge, and we are seeking more knowledge, which we must do, and we must ensure that the changes that we make, the innovations that we make are sitting solidly on the science, particularly in this era of health improvement and climate change resilience. We have the knowledge, and in technology we also have some of the tools. So we're constantly also looking to see how we can further improve with these tools. But truly, what we really need is a change in attitude, because the problems, if we think about it, we have made innovations, we have put positions on the table, but we have not sufficiently implemented so that we have achieved the improvement in the quality of life in the sustainable development, the sustainable prosperity that we're seeking. Why? Because the problems are basically political, they are economic, and they are cultural. And so for much of the innovation towards a green future, we have to begin to look at how we deal beyond the science, beyond the technology, both of which are extremely important as a base, but how we begin to look at the political, the economic, and the cultural approaches and attitudes that will help to engender the kind of change that is begging for attention. Thank you very much.